Hi, I'm Dr. Celia Williamson, and welcome to this free webinar on how to work effectively with girls to lower risk of human trafficking without doing years of research. Look, we know that human trafficking robs young people of their sense of safety, of their ability to trust others, and of their very freedom. And we also know through research that 77% of those trafficked young people that we miss will go on to experience street level prostitution. And there they will experience poor mental health in terms of post traumatic stress disorder, major depression, anxiety. They'll experience high levels of HIV risks. They will suffer pervasive and frequent and heinous violence and likely be addicted to drugs. And so we can avoid that. We can prevent that if we do it effectively. So I know that you've probably been out there searching for the answers. Where can I find something that actually works, that I can use my time and energy to put into something that's effective? And maybe you haven't been able to find the right answers. Maybe you've gone to human trafficking 101 presentations. Maybe you do those yourself. Maybe you're a member of a coalition, or you've just been searching on the internet and you've been looking for the effective ways to respond, but what you're finding is, here are the red flags of human trafficking. Here are the indicators. This is what human trafficking is. Here's a story from a survivor. All very important, but maybe you've done that and now you're ready to actually do the thing. How can I use my passion and my commitment to actually make a real difference? And that is what you can't find, unfortunately, on the internet. A lot of you have probably gotten involved because you heard a story. Maybe you watched a documentary, maybe you seen a news report, or you talked to a survivor, or you went to a presentation and it really moved you. It really changed you. And ever since then, you've had this nagging thing going on. I need to make a difference. I need to help young people avoid this. And story can be very powerful. I know because I heard a story myself, and I spent the next 26 years working as an anti-trafficking advocate. I grew up in the north side of Toledo as a high crime, low income area. And I became a social worker and I worked in that same community, and I would drive to work every day and I would see women standing out on the corner. And I have to say honestly that I did not like them. I wanted them to go away because I was working with kids and families, and prostitution brought drugs and crime into the neighborhood. I lived in that neighborhood, and so I would sweep up condoms, and I just thought it was a horrible thing for young people and families to experience. And then I had a colleague that drove into work, and he happened to tell me that he threw a glass of water on one of the women standing out there. And I went back to my office, and that really bothered me. And I started to think about my actions and my feelings about these women. And I really had an epiphany about who I thought I was, or claiming that I was, as a social worker, and my code of ethics there, and who I claimed I was as a spiritual person, as a Christian, um, and the way I felt. And I wasn't happy with myself. And I had an epiphany that I could help, I could be useful. So I went to the library and I searched and I searched, and I really couldn't find anything. This was back in 1993, to help women. And so I went on the streets myself for 6 months, 3 times a week, to learn about prostitution, the culture, the drug houses. I went in crack houses to talk to women. I went in a brothel to talk to a trafficker. I spent the time. Now, I don't want you to go and do that because that's very dangerous. But at that time, that was the only option I thought I had. And that was the way that I learned. And I met so much wisdom there, so many wise women there. And together, after 6 months, we sat down and we developed the Second Chance program. It's the oldest program in the state of Ohio that works directly with trafficking victims. Later, I found out that three of my childhood friends got caught up as sex trafficking victims. One of them was murdered by a client. And so you see me at the top right here visiting the scene where she was murdered. And In the lower left, that's my friend. That's me in the middle with the little pigtails. And that is my friend Emma to the right in our swimming pool, having fun, playing Barbies, telling each other about our hopes and dreams. And this is me in the lower right visiting her gravesite. That should have never happened. And so I graduated, I focused in this area, and I, you know, went on people's porches and I talked to them about trafficking, their trafficking experiences. You can see me in the bottom left. And I did street outreach and I handed out food and condoms and information on where to have places to stay that were safe. That's me on the bottom right. And I spent 26 years doing this work. I did research, I did all the things. And, I want you to know that I have received my PhD. I did 10 years of human trafficking focused research for the Department of Justice or the National Institutes of Health. I did over 200 presentations. I wrote grants, over $1 million worth of grants for the community, another $1 million at the university. I put in the time. I built a local coalition. It has 80 members. About 50 of those members have been active in changing laws. We collaborated with politicians. We changed 3 Ohio laws. Lots of work. I've done peer-reviewed articles and wrote book chapters and all of the things. And I've reached the height of my career. And so I want to spend the rest of my career teaching advocates how to do the most effective thing. Cut through all of the information you see in books and all of the research articles that you have to decipher and put into real meaning for the work that you do as a practitioner, and really just cut through all of the BS and get you straight to what's most effective. So today I'm going to talk about prevention. And just to prepare for prevention, I spent 3 years preparing a curriculum, an effective curriculum, a studied curriculum, an evaluated curriculum. And to do this, we reviewed 355 articles and government reports and non-government reports on prevention, on risk, and on human trafficking. I spent over 28 hours just in interviewing trafficked youth. I reviewed curricula. I put my curriculum in front of survivors and had them critique it. I put my curriculum in front of practitioners. I put it in front of teenagers and I had them review it. And I made changes based on the reviews. Then I had over 50 young people at risk go through the curriculum, and we pre-tested and post-tested them every single time. Actually, they took 21 pre and post tests. They really hung in there with me, and we evaluated those pre and post tests. And not only that, I went and got an independent evaluator, a statistician from Portland, to review these pre and post tests. And I have yet another evaluator that's evaluating them still, looking at the nuances. And then we made changes to the curriculum based on what the results were, what the statistically significant results were. And we eliminated those elements that weren't statistically significant to come up with the best prevention curriculum that we could offer. Not only that, but through the years, I would ask young people that were trafficked, what should I say to adults that are trying to help you? And over the years, we've had about 3 comments that I think are key and very wise. One of them is they said, tell them that we do it for love. So show us love, show us genuine and pure and kind love. I think that's very wise. They said, help keep me busy and positive. And I love that statement too, because there's a lot of research behind that statement. There's a lot of wisdom behind that statement. What we all know in this webinar to be true, and we haven't even met or talked, but what we all know is we have to keep our young people busy and positive. All that money you spent, if you had a teenager, all that money you spent taking them to basketball lessons and football lessons and cheerleading practice and computer camp and anything that you could think of to keep them busy and positive, and all the times and hours and days you drove to go and sit there on the bleachers and watch them play, um, all of that time was not necessarily for them to get a grand basketball scholarship. Or, maybe they couldn't even dribble, or they couldn't even run the basketball down the right side of the court at the right time. That wasn't the point. You spent all that time and all that money and all that energy just to keep them busy and positive, right? Because you're older now and you like to fall asleep at a reasonable time. And you don't want them outlasting you and sneaking out the window and going to join their friends. So you want to keep them busy so that their little butts might be tired too, so that by the time you go to bed, you're pretty sure they're in the bed. So no, it didn't cost you. It was an investment, and it was a wise investment. And that's what the young people are saying. The third thing that they're saying that I should tell you is stop us before we get caught up in it. And that's prevention. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, but before we talk about effective prevention, we have to talk about the barriers that prevent effective prevention, or the myths. And that can be really problematic. So, myth number one is anybody can be trafficked. I mean, we say that all the time. Anybody can be trafficked. Well, anybody can be trafficked. And it's pretty clear in the literature who's being trafficked. Okay, everybody's not at equal risk. There are some young people, that girls particularly, that are at higher risk than other girls, and boys are also trafficked as well, but everybody's not at equal risk. And in fact, when we say things like everybody's at equal risk, then we don't know where exactly to put our time, money, and resources. And we always have limited time, money, and resources. So if those things are limited, then we need to know who's at risk, and we need to run to those kids first. So who's at risk? We know particular populations, very clear in the literature who's at risk in terms of population: racial ethnic minorities, particularly people of color, LGBTQ identities, kids that live in poverty, kids with developmental disabilities, and foreign-born kids. And when I'm saying kids, I'm generally talking about teenagers. Yes, there may be somebody trafficked at 5 years old. That's very rare. Most trafficked kids are teenagers. The characteristics of these kids that have been involved in child abuse, maybe child maltreatment of some sort, which may have been involved in child protection. They may not have even been involved in child protection, but they've suffered sexual abuse or physical abuse or neglect, certainly emotional abuse. Kids who run away from home, or who have run away from home, or have been homeless at some point. Kids who've hung with influential others, meaning people who bought sex, or sold other people for sex. You're right in the line of fire when your crowd consists of any of those players. Kids with substance abuse disorders, mental health issues, educational problems, kids that have had contact with the criminal justice system or the child welfare system, kids that are gang affiliated, or kids that have witnessed or experienced violence. These kids far outweigh, they are at high risk for human trafficking. And I know some of you who are social workers or case managers, or you might be saying, oh my God, that's like 98% of my kids on my caseload. And you would be correct. Also, along with myth number one is anybody can be trafficked, and people are snatched into human trafficking. They're abducted or they're kidnapped, and that really talks more about kidnapping and abduction than it does about how human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking, works. So in sex trafficking, you're typically manipulated in. You're not walking down the street typically and snatched into a car. Now, of course, that has happened, but it's very rare. But what's very common is this manipulation where you are befriended by somebody. Now, why does that work? Because developmentally, young people love to connect. They need a peer group to belong to. They're trying to find their identity. And so, particularly if a kid is vulnerable, then a recruiter or a trafficker will befriend that young person, and they do it in very safe places. And these are very safe looking people that approach them. It's not the creepy guy that walks up to them, because everybody knows, to stay away from the creepy guy. So this is maybe another 14-year-old girl, maybe a 16-year-old boy, and they end up introducing you to the trafficker all the time, over time. But what happens is they really want to fill that need, that vulnerability. What is the need that that young person has? And they step forward to fulfill that need. So some kids just have basic needs. Maybe they're a runaway, or they're homeless, or they live in poverty, and they just have very basic needs. Food, get their nails done. That's not really a need, but to young people, when you're 15 years old, that's an important need. Clothes, coats, boots, things like that. Or it could be emotional needs. I need love. I never really had that mother figure, or that parental figure, or that father that loved me. And they're very vulnerable to that. And so, unfortunately, it's less likely to be snatch and grab. I kind of wish it were snatch and grab, because then you'd have a victim actively trying to get away. But how sex trafficking works is I befriend you, I get you very connected to me. It's almost like I'm brainwashing. People call it trauma bonding or Stockholm syndrome. But the only voice you start to hear or pay attention to is mine. And so over time, you start to believe what I say. You start to become loyal to me, because you also fear me. You love me, but you fear me, and you believe at some point that I am all powerful. Whatever you do, whatever you say, wherever you go, I will find you. I will hurt you. I will hurt your family. I will make your little sister do what you won't do. And so you greatly fear this person, but you also may think you love this person, because this person has done things for you and have gotten inside your head so deeply. I wouldn't be able to describe it to you, because as an independent, empowered person, it would be hard for you to get, but it would be so difficult for you to think independently that you might even ask, I'm getting ready to go to the bathroom and go pee. Like, how many squares of toilet paper do you think I should tear off? I mean, that kind of like deep in your head, it's a chaining of the mind, and it's a chaining of the heart. It's really less a chaining of the wrists and a chaining of the ankles. And that is what people need to understand. That is a big myth. And then over time, sex work becomes very normalized. And this trafficker's intent is to get his victim to participate in their own victimization along with him. And so that is how it works. That's the game. So, manipulation might be 90% of sex trafficking, and 10% is abduction. But people get that wrong. And so that's a very fundamental misunderstanding about sex trafficking. So good prevention really means the what you do, um, to prevent youth from being trafficked should be directly related to the how they get involved, right? So if they get involved because they're snatched, or there's a kidnapping or abduction going on, then of course, then our reaction to prevent it is to keep our kids in the house all the time, or to, put a tracking device on them, or, give them a phone number that they could call if they happen to get to a phone. But that's not really how it happens most of the time. So if how it happens is manipulation, then our response has to be to train youth to process situations as they're out in the world, to be able to see it coming, anticipate that this is what's happening, and then make steps to avoid it. And we also have to work with young people to start getting their needs fulfilled so that they're no longer vulnerable. The one way to make a trafficker walk away, you can call the police, you can do all these things, and you're going to tell the police, well, somebody is approaching my daughter and talking to my daughter. Okay, that's not illegal. So how are you going to stop it before it happens? You can't. But if you feel that vulnerability, if you feel that need, that trafficker will walk away, because they have no time to spend with empowered young people. And so that's how you work on prevention and how you do it effectively. Myth number 2 is Human Trafficking 101 presentation will prevent human trafficking for at-risk girls. It will not. For at-risk girls, they have had previous traumas. They are vulnerable. They're at risk because of that all those characteristics that I've talked to you about before. And so a trafficking 101 presentation, they come in, they say, look, this is what trafficking is. You know, here are the indicators. Here's a phone number to call if you're trafficked. Be safe out there. That's not going to help young people at risk because you can't get there from here. Meaning the 101 gives you, like I said, the red flags, the indicator, who's involved, how it happens, the experiences of victims, and the phone number to call. But it's sort of like you have to get this young person across this water, and you come in and you say, now look, I know you have to get across this water called life, and I want you to know there are alligators in the water, and some of them are under the water and you can't see them, and sometimes they raise their head and you can see them. And you know, if you're trying to get across the lake and one of them bites you or is trying to eat you, here's a 1-800 number for you to call. Okay, that is not going to prevent or help or save anybody. What we need to provide them with is a bridge that they can walk across or a boat that they can use to get across, not information. So some people have the mistaken belief that increased education just automatically increases safety. And it's probably because we're people who appreciate education, and that's how we've learned and grown and changed. But that doesn't really happen in terms of risk all the time. So if somebody's already at risk, if you come in and do a human trafficking 101 presentation, now they're knowledgeable about human trafficking and still at risk. Like magic doesn't happen that it automatically translates into some sort of effective prevention. So why are at-risk girls more vulnerable to trafficking? Because they appear to look like any other girl. It's like an iceberg analogy. You know, above the water, everybody looks the same. But underneath the water is all of the past traumas, all of the problems, all of the needs, all the vulnerabilities that young people have. And so coming in and saying, here's the information, see you later, is not going to work. And in fact, when we say do no harm, this could actually be causing harm, because now you came in, you did the presentation, you left, not to return, and you're like, okay, that's covered. And so left those young people out there to figure out how to get across the water without a boat. Myth number 3 is that, well, you know, given what you're saying, Celia, then I'm going to need years of education and experience to be effective. I'm really going to have to dig in, learn all these things, figure it out. And it's like, no, you don't, because I'm going to provide you with everything you need. But people that get frustrated are like, well, I don't have years and I don't have degrees and I don't have the right degree, or I didn't study the right issue, even if I do have the right degree. Then they say, well, look, at least I'm doing something. Well, doing something is one of the statements that I really, that's my pet peeve, because I think when you go to a doctor's office, you expect them to do the right thing, the best thing. And so here's an analogy: your doctor's doing something. You say, hey, doc, my shoulder hurts. And then he says, okay, let me check your knee. Now, this doctor is doing something, but he's not doing the specific thing, the right thing, the effective thing, the targeted thing. So when we look at what we're doing right now, the target, the bullseye, is a curriculum for at-risk girls. Okay, not a curriculum for trafficked girls because they're already trafficked, not a curriculum for the general population of youth that aren't at risk because they really aren't at high risk. And so if we have limited time, money, and resources, we're going to spend it on kids that are at risk so we can prevent it effectively. And if you're doing awareness raising, that's awesome. If you're a member of a coalition or a task force or a commission, that's amazing. If you do case management, if you're doing 101 presentations, I do 101 presentations, and I think they're awesome for a general population of kids or for parents or professionals and those types of things. But we really don't want to be checking the knee when we should be looking at the shoulder. So we want to target right on the bullseye, a curriculum for at-risk girls, and actually have a population of girls that are at risk. So here's the sweet spot, is in yellow. We're looking for a curriculum for at-risk girls or at-risk youth, and a curriculum designed for at-risk youth. So there are lots of anti-trafficking curricula out there. There are curricula here that are for trafficked youth, and not that many. That's very few and far between. And it's really designed for youth that were trafficked. And then down here, there's a wide range of curricula for the general population of youth. You just go in a classroom and you talk about it. And that's really like a human trafficking 101, or maybe a general curriculum that someone's designed just for kids in general. But we're looking for kids at risk because we got to make the biggest impact, right? Because we're limited in terms of our time, our money, and our resources. And the goal, of course, of all these curricula is to increase the protective factors that kids need and to decrease those risk factors. So I hope you're saying, tell you what does work. So let me tell you what does work. You listening? Okay. First, the type of curriculum that works for at-risk kids has to follow these elements. And so we're looking for a curriculum. And by the way, this list here was developed by a group that looked at, it's called a review of the reviews. So they looked at whole bodies of literature, and they looked across like sexual assault prevention and substance abuse prevention. And they looked across a lot of different literatures. And they looked for those common elements in evidence-based prevention practices. And they said, here are the elements of across all of these literatures that are the most effective in preventing. They're evidence-based. That evidence-based means they've been evaluated and they're highly effective. Now, we looked at that and we added 2 elements that made it specific to human trafficking. And those were getting kids who are actually at risk for human trafficking. And I have an assessment tool for you that I'm going to give you for free. It's easy to use. You're going to use this assessment tool. You're going to assess kids, and it's going to tell you who's at risk. So we added actually have kids at risk for trafficking, and we added involve survivors into your planning for the curriculum or into the curriculum itself, into delivering the curriculum. So these effective elements say that you're looking for a curriculum that has varied teaching methods and skills, all kinds of varied teaching methods, not just lecture, but maybe they have role play or games or ways for kids to process different ways so that kids can have varied methods of getting information, accepting information, buying in. And then are getting kids that are at risk and populations at risk. Effective curriculum has a way to assess kids, has a way to evaluate the programs, the program. And the form that you should use. Are you going to deliver it in a classroom? Is it a curriculum at all? Is it billboards? Is it posters? What's the form? And then the feasibility. Is it possible? So for instance, the curriculum I'm going to talk to you about is 8 sessions long. Is that even feasible in your situation? So feasibility is going to be important in terms of what curricula you adopt, and curriculum it varies, ranges from like 1 hour to like 10 sessions. So, there's a wide range. So what's feasible for you? And then interrelationships and timing. Does the people that are delivering the curriculum, do they have a good relationship with the kids? Do they have a good relationship with the agency that they may be entering into deliver this curriculum? So the relationships are going to be important. If the kids see you in a particular uniform and they don't like that particular profession, it doesn't matter how good the curriculum is, they are not going to receive you. So are the relationships between the facilitating agency or person and the agency and the kids, is that a good relationship? Is the timing right politically? Is this a good time to be offering this curriculum? Is the curriculum comprehensive? The people that are delivering the curriculum, are they knowledgeable about human trafficking? That's another thing that we added, but it's knowledgeable about the content. The number of doses, I talked about involved survivors. So survivors should be involved in the development of the curriculum itself, or in the delivery of the curriculum, or both. But these are questions that you can ask. I have a document for you it's a report going over in more detail all of these elements that you can have to look at any curricula and say, and to judge whether this is a good quality curricula or not. So the number of doses, we know that it should be more than one dose when we're talking about at-risk kids, but there's not been research done. We're not there yet where we can say how many doses would be effective, but we know it's more than one. We can assume more than two is better than one, but no one can tell you that yet. And then the curricula should be guided by a theory, and it should certainly be rooted in the literature on human trafficking. So that's your guide to help you understand if you are looking at a good curriculum or not. Now, how do you know which kids are at risk, right? You have to know that first. So in this webinar, because you're here, we are going to give you the HT risk assessment tool. And this is a very easy tool to use. You can give it to the kids unless you think that the kids have poor reading level, then you can read it to them, or you can mark off the answers as they tell you. But if they have a 5th grade reading level, they should be able to take this survey by themselves. They check the right answers, and if you turn on the back, it will give you easy way to score it, and it will tell you who's at risk. It will even tell you who's likely being trafficked right now. And if they are being likely trafficked right now, you definitely want to call the 888-3737-888 hotline number and give them information. But otherwise, this will tell you who is at risk for human trafficking. And most people, they sell these tools, because it takes a lot of many months and many hours and much study and evaluation to come up with a valid tool. And it took us several hundred hours, couple hundred hours, I would say, to come up with this tool, to validate this tool, evaluate it statistically, and do all those things, eliminate those elements, and run it by all the survivors, run it by practitioners, run it by teens to make sure they understood the questions they were asking, that it was asking them. And so this tool is awesome, it's valid, and we're giving it away for free. Also, I want to talk about then the thing that I think is most effective that I've spent the last 3 years of my life on, and it's called the Best Life Human Trafficking Prevention Curriculum. So what's awesome about the curriculum is that if manipulation is the way that kids are trafficked, and they are, I spent 26 years knowing that, learning that, studying that, and talking to kids about that, then we have to teach them to assess their situations and to get out of their situations. So we use throughout the curriculum, woven throughout, is the SAFER method. And the SAFER method is to see what's happening right now for what it is, not pretty it up, not avoid it, but to see it clearly, and assess your situation and ask yourself questions. Am I in danger right now? What's happening right now? And then to find possible solutions. Well, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, and then focus on the best one. Empower yourself to get ready to respond, and then respond. And that's what we teach kids, because we do that. That's what we do as adults. If we're in a dangerous situation or a risky situation, or with a risky type person, that's what we do. We run through that, but we do it very quickly, and we don't, it's like batting our eyes. We just do it. But if we slowed down what we actually did, we would understand that we are using this SAFER model. And unfortunately, though, kids don't often use the SAFER model because their frontal cortex of their brain, the decision-making part of their brain, isn't even fully developed until they're about 24 or 25. So we have to teach this method, and we have to keep reinforcing that, and having them do role plays and having them practice and that sort of stuff. That's the best way to keep kids safe. So we have an 8-session curriculum. And the first session, we talk about human trafficking knowledge. We teach kids about what human trafficking is and all the things. The second one is called empathy, and we titled it Make It Real. And that's where they hear from a survivor, the experience of a survivor, not the pretty woman where you're getting your nails done and you're making all this money and you get to marry Richard Gere, but the actual reality of what happens in sex trafficking. The third lesson talks about risky people and risky situations and how to see that, how to assess it. And we start the SAFER model and they start practicing with that. Then in lesson 4, we talk about boundaries. So internet boundaries, physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, and how some boundaries are good to have. But to have safe people that you can talk to is important, and how to assess those safe people and make sure that you have one in your life that supports you. Um, Lesson 5 talks about being a good bystander, how to safely interrupt. Lesson 2 talks about the need to belong, and also stigmatizing and othering people and how that puts other people at risk for trafficking, and other ways to exploit them, quite frankly. Lesson 7 is about having a positive self-identity and self-esteem. And then the final lesson is to teach people about a knowledge of local resources so that they can reach out anytime that they feel that they have a problem that needs to be solved, that there are plenty of resources that teens can reach out themselves and find out information if the service is free, if they need a pregnancy test, if, how much it costs, do they have to have their parents involved, what days, what times, who do they talk to, teaching kids how to reach out and take care of issues and problems before they become serious enough for them to be vulnerable and they have to look for people who might not have their best interests in mind to help them. So the curriculum, in essence, also moves from being very generalized, here's what human trafficking is, to very personalized, here's how I feel inside and how I might respond. And that's done very purposefully, because as you build relationship, as you get to know kids more and more, then you can make it more personalized. You can have them reflect internally instead of just giving information. We're not talking about just education and knowledge building, but we're talking about knowledge building along with helping kids change the way they think, the way they behave, and the way they feel. And any human behavior type of theory, any model on human behavior is going to be talking about that. It's going to be either focused on let's change your thinking, because they know that your feeling and behavior will eventually come along, or let me change your feeling about something and your thinking and behavior will come along, or let me change your behavior and your thinking and feeling will come in line. So for instance, behavior modification, I'm changing your behavior. I don't care about your feeling, because I know if I get you to behave this way, eventually your thinking and your feeling will come in unison. Or cognitive behavioral therapy. If I change your thinking and some of your behavior, your feeling about it will come in line. So every theory is trying to do one of those 3 things. And so that's why we're focused here on changing a kid's thinking, behaving, and feeling about something. We also move from external to internal, getting them to focus on and reflect on how they think, how they believe, how they feel, instead of here's just the information. The structure of the Best Life Human Trafficking Prevention Curriculum, again, it's 8 sessions, and it's for kids who are between the ages of 12 and 17. And who are at risk. Now, can a general population of youth go through the curriculum and be effective? Absolutely. We did the harder job. We focused on at-risk kids so that we knew it would be effective with them. And then if there's a general population of girls, that's fine too. Is this particular curriculum suitable for boys? It is not suitable for a male identity. So it's suitable for a female identity. Ideally 8 to 12 in one group would be awesome. Sometimes you don't have that luxury and you have to do more than 12. That's fine. It depends on what you can handle. I think when you get over, 20 girls in a group, then you're really losing a lot of good quality meaning. It's almost like a generalized admission to a rock concert. So I probably wouldn't recommend that, but you can have as little as 2 girls as well in the curriculum. Ideally, you should meet once a week or 2 times a week, but it shouldn't really go more than that. You should at least at minimum meet once a week, or else the gains are lost if you meet every other week. The groups can last from 1 hour to 2 hours. It's most suitable for social service type of programs, after school programs, faith-based groups. It can work in a school, but we haven't yet pared it down to fit into time slots at schools, but it works in almost any child welfare, juvenile court situation, after school program, faith-based things. And there's an evaluation built in so that you know right away if you are making progress and if things are going well, and it measures how successful you are. So the effectiveness of the Best Life curriculum, we evaluated, like I said, by an independent evaluator, statistician in Portland, and we found that just on our cursory review, we're doing a lot more deep level evaluation, but just on our overview, we know that the curriculum helps increase human trafficking knowledge, helps increase empathy, feelings about human trafficking and human trafficking victims. It helps people to work more effectively if they're in a situation where there's risky people or risky situations. It is an improved scores in terms of kids wanting to have good internet boundaries, physical boundaries, and knowing the importance of having a multiple positive pro-social support system around them. So putting kids on the right track changes lives. And so here's a couple of testimonials, people who actually implemented the curriculum. It says, one of them says, out of all my 15 years of working with teens, this is the first time I've ever come across materials that have been so useful, dead on, and needed. It was so beneficial. Anyone can use it. I loved it so much. I also introduced it to my Christian fellowship. And that is Shayna, who works in a mental health system, but also is affiliated with the YWCA. And she gave a testimonial after having used the curriculum. Here's another email I got. It says, my name is Bailey, and I blacked out some of it so you wouldn't find out who it is. And I'm the Human Trafficking Anti-Trafficking Coordinator for, and she names her agency. We've taken your youth curriculum course. We have implemented it with our local juvenile detention center for 2 years now, going on the 3rd summer. We received so much positive feedback from the lesson plans with our residents, so the kids liked it, and the staff. So you bring the passion and commitment that you have, and I'll bring the knowledge and skills that I have, and we'll change lives. So at this point, you might be saying, I'm interested, but I'm a little nervous. So what do I get, and what does it cost? So let's just get right to the point. So what you're going to get when you're trained on this curriculum, you're going to get the full 8-session curriculum based on the best elements, 400 hours of my research, including the literature review, the interviews with survivors, practitioners, and 54 youth, the evaluation of those youth. It's going to be delivered by me, an expert of 26 years in anti-trafficking work. And that would be valued at $6,000 if I actually had to do that again. So you're also going to get a complete step-by-step instructor's guide outlining each session, equipped with all the instructions, definitions, and activities. And that book alone would cost you $250. You're going to get pre-developed youth-focused PowerPoint presentations that coincide with each session. So I'm going to give you the actual completed PowerPoint that you're going to use to teach each lesson for the 8 lessons. So you're going to get the 8 PowerPoints. That would be valued at $400. You're going to get outlined and fully developed activities. So what you're going to do is you're going to present the content, and then you're going to do an activity that sort of grounds the information that they just learned in a cool activity that's fun. And you're going to get those fully developed activities to ground that information, and that's valued at $400. So far, we're up to $7,050. What else you're going to get is all of the pre and post tests for each session. So there are 8 sessions. So every time you come in, you give a pre-test, and at the end, at the conclusion of that session, you're going to give a post-test. That's valued at $2,000. You're going to get all the permission slips that you can give to parents. You're going to get the certificates of completion that you're going to give to youth when they complete the curriculum. You're going to get your facilitator certificate as a trained and certified Best Life Curriculum Facilitator. And you're going to get suggestions for how to engage youth in anti-trafficking work following the curriculum if you want to do more. On top of all that, you're going to get live weekly meetings with me, and we're going to work together weekly, and we're going to process. You're going to receive tips from me. You can ask me questions about the curriculum, about the content, about trafficking in general, whatever you need. And that's a value at $8,000. So all total, we're at $17,100. So if we threw in the HT risk assessment, which you're getting that for free for $400, the curriculum at $6,000, the guide at $250, the PowerPoints at $400, the activities at $400, the pre and post test fully done at $2,000 with ways to score them. The permission slips and certificates would be valued at $50. My time would be valued at $8,000. That would be $17,500. Now, of course, I'm not going to charge you $17,500. That's ridiculous. But if an agency called me and said, hey, Celia, would you develop this for my agency? I would not entertain $17,500. It would be too low. But because I can do this and I can automate some of it, some of my training, and the work has already been done, I don't need to charge that much. And I know that your heart is good. You're trying to do the best thing possible. So the cost, the investment that you would make if you want to be trained, certified, and do effective work is going to be $499 per person. So consider becoming a certified trainer and taking the course so that you can do effective work to prevent young people from being trafficked. The other bonus that you get is you get free access to our Emancipation Nation network. Now, you get that for free whether you become a trainer or you don't. That's just something free that we offer. You can use this link to get to the network, or you can just simply Google Emancipation Nation Network, and then they'll ask you a few questions. You'll come in, you'll introduce yourself. There are hundreds of anti-trafficking advocates from across the US and around the world that are members in the network. When you go in the network, you can click on and receive a video tour from me, and it kind of educates you on the network and how to get around the network. But you'll find grants that are focused on human trafficking. You'll find anti-trafficking focused jobs that are around the country, maybe in other countries. You'll find information on the latest research that we post in there. There are lots of free webinars going on at various times during each month. There are free workshops and also paid classes there, and various different types of paid classes and topics that you might be interested in. So by now you might be thinking, do I already have to have some kind of extensive human trafficking knowledge? Well, it's good to have human trafficking knowledge to come into it, and you can find good basic information about human trafficking at polarisproject.org or sharedhope.org. Those are two very credible sites where you know that you're getting credible information. But you don't have to have special human trafficking knowledge, because I'm going to teach you that in the very first lesson. So another question is, do I need a degree to implement this curriculum? You don't need a degree to implement the curriculum. If you have a degree, that's always very helpful, but you don't need a degree. What you need is to be genuine and authentic and non-judgmental and passionate and supportive, those type of skills. Do I need special knowledge to use the assessment tool that we have, that HT risk assessment tool, or the pre and post test that we give before and after each curriculum lesson? You do not. We're going to train you. I'm going to train you on how to do that. Do you offer a discount for agencies that want more than one person trained? We absolutely do. So email me at celia@celiawilliamson.com, and we can have that discussion. Is the curriculum suitable for boys? It is not suitable for boys at this time, or I should clarify, people that have a male gender identity. So not suitable, only suitable for girls or female identities. Can I, as a male, implement the curriculum? You certainly, absolutely can. Will the curriculum help prevent youth from being labor trafficked? We were cognizant of labor trafficking, and we put in materials that we think focuses a little on labor trafficking, but it's largely focused on sex trafficking. Will I get university credit for this course? This is not a university course, and it's not a credit-bearing course, so no. But I do want you to ask yourself, is it time for me to make a significant difference in the lives of young people? And if that time is now, then let's get started. Should I keep doing something and hope it turns into the best outcome for youth? I wouldn't recommend that. And how much do I value my time, and where do I want to put my energy? And hopefully you want to put it into effective practice. So who's best suited for this curriculum? Anybody who's tried to make a difference in the past and is ready to make a difference now. Anybody who places value on a young person's sense of safety, trust, love, and freedom, and anybody who wants to make that real difference. So if you're ready to make the type of changes you dreamed about when you heard the story that made you passionate about human trafficking, join me to learn how to implement the best life human trafficking prevention curriculum for at-risk girls, and let's create new stories that set young people off onto a life they deserve. Again, to register for the curriculum course, you're going to look below and click, and you'll also find your HT risk assessment that you can use to assess to see if a young person is at risk or could potentially be being trafficked. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the work that I'm sure you're already doing, and I hope we get a chance to work together in the future.